The hill I will die on is that events can be profitable.
Start small. Like, it's easy to be profitable on small events.
Our first event was 2017, $70 for a half day.
Perfect.
That's all I could handle.
Great. Like, you don't have to go so big so fast. For our launch event, we did a founder funder mixer at my house. Like, literally, talk about no budget. We had 400 RSVPs. I was panicking.
I just don't think you can compete with the magic that happens with an in-person touch point.
Agreed. Having it as an element in your business is crucial.
For someone who's having their first event, best practices.
Truly the best way to get someone to attend anything or even buy a product or whatever is
Jaclyn, welcome back to Powerhouse Women.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be back.
I'm so excited to talk about, I know, one of my favorite topics, and I'm guessing yours too, which is just the whole world of events, the trends that we're seeing for 2025, what's working, what's not. You really are the pioneer in the space that we both get to play in, which is like the women's event space. And things have really, really changed. So I'm excited to dive into all this.
Yeah. I mean, when I started the event, or like the first iteration of it was like 2011.
Yeah.
And really social media was just starting. It was like so different, like vastly different than it is today. And even I would say at Create and Cultivate's like biggest of like, pre-COVID, there wasn't that, I mean, there was obviously conferences have always existed, but there wasn't that many that were, kind of similar or offshoots of like what we were doing for different categories. And now it's like, there are so many people playing in the event space.
Which is exciting because I do actually think, and I say this to people all the time, the number of people who say, can you have this every month? Or can you have this in my city? I'm like, I don't need to. Because there are so many other conferences to go to. There's amazing women doing amazing things. And so I want to really kind of pull back the curtain. Maybe we can start with some of the things that have really worked for both of us in terms of one of the biggest challenges that I see is people being able to fill seats and sell tickets. And it can be like this mentality of that it's so hard, or because there's so many other events out there, you're competing with each other. But I know that's not how either of us think.
It's not. Yeah.
Give me your take on that.
I would say there's like crucial elements to everything. One is like a really strong launch. I think that's so imperative. And I think it's something that Create and Cultivate has done extremely well. Like we build up momentum, we create excitement, and then we launch. I mean, as you launch, you always want to be selling tickets when you launch, or creating RSVPs or whatever it might be, because you want the lowest barrier to entry to get someone to buy the ticket. Which leads me to my next point, which is pricing. So it's interesting because Create and Cultivate, like, in the scheme of things, when we had launched, had always been like a very inexpensive ticket. When we had launched, in 2016, 2017, the conferences that were out there for women were like $2,000 to $5,000 tickets. They were expensive tickets, whereas we were like more accessible, $299, $599 for VIP, et cetera. We never really flexed on those prices. Like we kind of stayed within that range, I would say still till to this day. But at the same time, I think there's like also more competition now. So from a pricing perspective, you have to be open to thinking about what is the goal of this event? Is this event to get new people through the door to introduce them to the brand? Is this to reignite our existing community and then bring them back in? Is it to get them to maybe up level into like one of our more specific niche down events? All those different things. And if the goal is for you and whoever's listening, I want people in the room, then you have to price accordingly.
Yeah.
Or create payment plans or things of that nature. Because I think for a lot of people, they're budgeting, they're figuring stuff out, especially if it's like a business event, like they're business owners, they have other expenses. So something to think about like as you're sort of building that out. And lastly is like, why attend? Like spelling that out really clearly of like, who's going to be in the room, why you should be in the room, and, why you should, spend on this ticket specifically. Is it because there's amazing speakers? Is it because the topics resonate so deeply with you? Is it because there's going to be really good food and drinks? Like whatever it is, like for your specific event, you have to be so clear on the value prop of like, why do you want to be there?
Have you noticed in the last year or two a shift in, let's just even say post-COVID, the buyer behavior when it comes to events? Have you had to pivot your strategy?
I think like for us, we've really done a lot of our smaller masterminds and things like that. And those have always sold out. And those are so small for us. So
True.
I think that's also why they've been like moving more quickly, because we have such a large audience. So it's easy to kind of double down on like those smaller events. They just sell more quickly. But I think for us, it's less. Here's what I'll say. I think one thing that was new and different for us was like people bought very last minute.
Yeah.
Which was something that kind of had happened in the past, but I don't think as much as it did with some of our more recent events, where it was kind of this like last minute rush for ticket purchases. So maybe people aren't planning as much or things of that nature. We also, one thing I like to do as an event planner is I like to launch very early on. Like I want to be 6 months out from the event itself.
Okay. Yeah.
Because especially for the larger events,
Yeah.
because I like to have time to market to all audiences. There's the planner girlies, which are like me, where I'm like, I need to know where I'm going, what I'm doing, where are my dinner reservations, who else is joining me, all
6 months
the
in
things.
advance.
6 months in advance.
Same.
Like I need to know, like where is the location? So that's like important too. But you also want to build momentum along the way and introduce to new audiences, obviously announce more speakers. That takes time, all the different things that kind of go into that. But I think having a date, location, and launching and maybe some programming is important to do, because I think people are now planning more in advance a little bit, while also you're still going to get those last minute people.
And I think what I have seen is the panic that sets in that in between lull, because we launch our tickets about 6 months in advance. And I just know to plan for the trickle that happens in between kind of our initial. So how we do it is, what's been really effective is noticing people buy tickets right before a deadline, right before the price goes up.
Yes.
Consistently. So we'll do a 1 week flash sale. It's the lowest price people get, and they know it's only 1 week. I'll spend 3 weeks leading up to it,
promoting
telling them
1 week. Yeah.
1 week, this is your chance. So that tends to sell. I mean, this last year it sold almost 50% of our tickets in 1 week. But then I know I'm going into a season where that next 5 months will sell a fraction of that until about the last few weeks.
Exactly.
And what I see is people panicking and starting to discount tickets and starting to devalue the event because they're not seeing the ticket sales. But it's such a good reminder that there's always going to be those different audiences. And especially nowadays, I do notice a lot more ticket sales closer to an event for whatever reason.
Yeah, for whatever reason. Yeah. I'm aligned with that. We've never discounted tickets. What we have done is we've done promo codes for specific groups or partners or speakers who've maybe asked for that.
Sure.
But like the maximum I would say is 10% in that way. Unless there's, I truly can't think of anything else that we've done that might have been like more steeply discounted, because I think it's really crucial, because I think at the end of the day, to your point, it starts to, one, it's like you never want to upset the people who paid full price. Like that's where my head goes immediately. Like,
exactly.
Could you imagine if you paid, I don't know, $1,000 for a ticket and then you see it for 50% off 3 months later? Like it's actually not fair to that customer. So that's how I've always thought about it, where it's like, I don't ever do that. And I don't think we'll ever do that. Like, I think it's basically just like maybe that one little bit, but I think that's an important thing for your event, because it really is about customer service at the end of the day versus revenue.
Yeah.
But I get it, because as an event planner, it's so challenging to be like, how many people am I feeding? Like, how many seats do I need? And you're like looking at the numbers and you're like seeing this trickle and you're like, ugh. And then the last minute you're rushing to increase everything. And then there's rush fees. So basically the bottom line of this podcast is, please buy your tickets early. Buy your tickets early.
We love you.
We love you, please. No, it is a challenging thing, but it is the nature of the beast when it comes to events.
You become the best event attendee once you've hosted events, because you know to buy your ticket early.
Oh, yeah. I love attending an event.
Yeah.
I'm like, what a joy that I can just sit here and do nothing. Like, I love this for me. It's so fun. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's definitely one of the things where you're like, I know they need to know.
So, filling seats is obviously one way of monetization. And really the place that Create and Cultivate, I think, has been such a pioneer, has been the way that you have strategically aligned yourself with brands. And for an event that maybe hasn't tapped into that, an event like, think back to your beginning stages where you didn't have the same email list size, where you didn't have the same audience size. What are some tangible ways that people can start to engage the brands that they love in these events? Because it's such a value to brands. You're bringing their ideal customer together in one room, and that adds a lot of value. So for people who aren't tapping into that, what would you say?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So obviously we've done massive brand sponsorships. I think at like our San Francisco event, we had over 95 brands on site, which is insane.
That makes my head spin.
Yeah. I mean, it also made my head spin, but but again, it wasn't always like that. So like, to your point, like a lot of people ask me like, how do I get brand sponsorship? Things of that nature. So you have to think like a brand, I think, is the number one thing. Like if you're giving someone $10,000, let me just say, what are your expectations for that? Like for your business, like thinking about it from that perspective, like I always will say, like, even to our team, I'm like, if you paid someone $20,000, what email would you expect to get from them? What service would you expect to get from them? Like, you really have to start thinking in that way. And I came from an agency background. Right. So I was so used to like clients and client satisfaction and how to think like, and, you know, work with a brand so that they're super satisfied and like the event is, or event campaign, whatever, is successful. So the approach I took was like, okay, for instance, let's talk about a shoe brand. Like a shoe brand is going to want to, at the end of the day, sell shoes or build brand awareness around their business. So if they're Steve Madden, they have brand awareness. They don't really need that. Sales is going to be like their bottom line, let's just say. But if they're like a local shoe company that's kind of just getting off the ground and they're trying to build list, like brand awareness might be key for them. So approaching the sponsorship from that perspective is going to be really crucial. The reality is if you're a smaller event with a smaller amount of people, you need brand awareness clients, or your clients have to be spending a lot of money. And the number one thing you need to do when you're talking to a sponsor is know your audience inside and out.
Yeah.
So when they come to the table, you can say, we have, you know, for instance, 21 to 35-year-old women who make on average $150,000 a year. They're in charge, you know, of their household spending on these certain categories. And like, this is who's in the room. Yep. And so for them, they can say, okay, great. Like that's our audience, you know, or that's an audience I would like to have. And then you can build sponsorship around that. But the number one thing you need to do when you're first starting out is price accordingly. You don't want to go in with a big, you know, $20,000, $50,000 sponsorship if like 20 people are in the room. Yeah. That cost for them is too high. $1,000 acquisition cost for 20 people, like individually, insane. So they're not going to like bite. Come in at a price appropriate sponsorship level, give them amazing service, over deliver, create a case study. Use that case study to then show other sponsors what you were capable of and like what that brand was able to get out of it. And then from there, you start building up your rapport within the industry. And then obviously you want to get repeat clients like over time.
Yeah, so smart. And the key point about if you don't have those metrics on your audience, start to collect it. That was something we started to do a few years ago, even at the point of purchase and make it, it's like optional for people to fill out, but most of them do. And now we have data to say, here's the women who are in the room, or here's what, you know, the majority of our audience looks like. So I love that. So profitability. The hill I will die on is that events can be profitable. Yeah. I just don't believe that. And I know that if you look at it correlated with launching an e-course where there's no hard costs. Yeah. Yes. Is that technically more profitable? Sure. And I do believe events can be profitable. And I do believe that it's the value to a brand that does it right is immeasurable. So I'm like, do you want to chime in with your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, no,
when
for
people
sure.
When people will say like, oh, events aren't profitable, it's not worth it. I mean, obviously you've built a whole business around events.
Yeah, no, totally. And we like pretty much always operated on like a 50% margin for our events, which is like great to know. Yeah, which is really good. Yep. Industry standard, I would say for like more like conferences, things of that nature, is like 20 to 30%. Which is still really good.
Still great. Yeah.
But I think it really comes down to knowing what to spend on and knowing what to save on. Really thinking through the attendee experience of like what matters the most, right? Like, do you splurge on having the most gorgeous flowers in the bathroom, like a 1 second experience for someone maybe while they're in there? Probably not. But do you splurge on it for the stage where all the photos are taken and the talent's there? Like, yes. So really thinking through like what are the things where you can kind of pull back and it won't affect someone's overall experience. And also, where can you partner with people, right? Like, where are ways you can cut costs to partner with people that can help you? Like, a good example of this is like, we would partner with brands like Sweet Green or Beyond Meat or things like that for lunch, where they would provide in-kind lunch for 3,000 people. The catering bill on that would be $50,000 maybe. So that's a huge cost saving for us. It creates a great brand partnership. They obviously provided amazing service. And it's like, that's a line item that's easy for us to get rid of. So things like that to sort of think about. But yeah, like I definitely events are profitable. Are they profitable from day one? Probably not. I think it's really important. Like I always say, like Create and Cultivate like did not make money for many years. It broke even for a lot. I remember one event we did lose money on. And these were in the early days, but it wasn't until I started to like really take it seriously as a business that I really was like, okay, we got to be super cost effective on these events. And so that's when it kind of changed, because previously I was running it more as like a marketing initiative for my agency. So that being said, like I had the luxury of building a community while not making money, while I had a company that did make money.
Yeah.
So there is like an unfair advantage to that if you're going all in on an events business, but start small. Like it's easy to be profitable on small events. Like these big events like aren't for everyone. That's like first and foremost. Like they definitely, like when you talk about the e-course, I'm like, how nice to just go to bed. Not have to like stuff a gift bag, deal with whatever.
Even get dressed. Put on pants.
You don't have to get dressed and you're making that kind of money. Amazing. Events in a way have to be like something you love and are passionate about, because it will kill you.
It will at least take your soul.
Yeah, at least take your soul. But like if you love that side of it, like it is amazing, and you can do it in a way that is extremely profitable.
And I think that's where I really knew that I loved events when I decided. It was like, that was the thing that I wanted to clear a lot of the mentorship, a lot of the other things that I was doing, showing up on Zoom, and figure out the way to make the business really centered around events, retreats, and they all have different profitability levels, So looking at the entire business, our overall offer mix, and really strategizing how can the event be the center of the brand, and then what else can come around of it. Exactly. So when you look at your approach to events now, because the last podcast you were on, you were here and we talked about your decision to buy back with your partner, Marina, Create and Cultivate. You've revamped the brand. You're doing so many cool things now. How does your business for Create and Cultivate look now versus how it looked in the initial iteration? Because the events are different. The focus is different. I can feel, even the energy is different. It's so palpable. Yeah. What does that look like now?
Yeah. So now, I think previously, like we, in 2018, 2019, we had so much going on. Like, obviously we had the podcast, we still have the podcast, but we had a lot of licensing deals. We had a book deal. We had truly a million things going on. So it was like a lot. And so basically we kind of took a step back and we're like, okay, what are the things that we want to focus on as we like essentially relaunch in many ways? So obviously the events are a part of that. So the events though are a once a year festival, which will host thousands of women. We're calling it Coachella for Career Women.
I can't wait to talk more about this.
It's really exciting. So it'll be next summer, July 2025 in Los Angeles. It's going to basically be a gigantic campus. We have an area called Center Court, which will be all about women in sports, like fitness, wellness, all that stuff. We have a test kitchen area for women in food and beverage and CPG, a creator tent for obviously all of our TikTokers and Instagrammers, small business marketplace, main stage, obviously where all the big talent will be, a musical performer, which is the first time we've ever done that.
So cool.
So much to do.
It is Coachella for ambitious women.
Exactly. So we're very excited about that. And that'll be like a year-over-year event, sort of like flagship. We also are popping up at Austin at South by Southwest. So we have our Future Summit. It's an event that we've done year over year. It's always really popular. It's a free event. It's a great way to kind of re-engage with the audience. And obviously being that South by is happening at the same time, there's so many amazing people in town. It's so
brilliant.
Yeah, it's really
to
fun.
Align yourself with something else that's going on adjacent to your industry.
It's exciting. And so we've been building out that and are launching that in the next few days, which is awesome. And so we'll have those two big events. Everything else is really small and curated. So we have our Blueprint Mastermind, which is a 6-month program for women building their businesses. We'll launch our Legacy House, which will be for women doing 7 to 8 figures. So obviously leveling up in that way. And that's a year-long program with 2 retreats, one of which will be international, which I'm super excited about.
So fun.
Yeah, we're really excited for that. And then we have our Supper Club, which is like our dinner series. We'll do 4 of those next year, which basically is like bringing together 75 women for like a networking, beautiful meal speaker type thing. And then we'll have our retreats. So we'll have our 7-figure founder retreat, which we did last year, which was really amazing. And then we'll have a mom focused retreat.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, that really is a huge diversification from what Create and Cultivate was known as pre-2020, which is so cool. So what was behind the decision to pivot?
I think like there's so many more events in market. I think like for us, what we found was, And one of the things that we never really did was like monetize our audience beyond these like low entry point tickets.
Yeah.
So when we tested Blueprint and Seven Figure Founder and they like sold out immediately, we're like, oh, okay, there's interest here for something that's more high touch, hands-on, intimate, bespoke to their specific experience. And so it kind of came to light that we're like, oh, we need to be doing more content like this. And honestly, I love that stuff. I genuinely love being in a room where I'm like, I know this person's name and their business and I can really help and make an impact. Obviously at the large scale events, it's like craziness. Like you don't know everyone that's there. It's like, you know, it's a lot of fun. But what we realized is like, we want to create an event that is the go-to event for every ambitious woman. So in the same way, if you're like a big festival girl, you're like, I got to go to Coachella. Or if you're like, I'm in tech, I have to go to South by, or I'm in innovation, I have to be at CES. We want that to be the case for our festival year over year and really just create this like dynamic 3-day experience that is unlike any other place for women who own their businesses, women who are in corporate, VCs, you know, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, what I can hear too that I want to highlight for everybody is, you know, the journey you've been on to build now this diverse community where you have all of those populations under one roof. That wouldn't have been the right go-to-market strategy for year one. Cultivate. So when you think about best practices for someone who's having their first event or they just had their first event in 2024, they're really wanting to grow it. What are some of the things that you either from your own experience or you've observed really makes the difference in terms of the events that stick and they have a long lifespan year over year and the ones that kind of fizzle out and don't really create that stickiness?
Totally. So I would say is like, you need a really strong brand around your event. So whatever the name is, like Powerhouse Women, Create and Cultivate, like people, when I say create and cultivate now, and again, we've had a long time to do this, people like picture it in their head. They know what it's like. They'll say that's very create and cultivating, which is like such an honor, right? Like,
now you're like, now it's an adjective.
It's an adjective. Like people know what to see and what to expect. So like being consistent, don't be like everyone else. I think that's also really important. Like have an event that looks and feels very different than anything that's out in the market. And that doesn't have to mean like a crazy departure, but have something that's uniquely yours that is exciting to you and really speaks volumes about your brand. And I think for Create and Cultivate, like that was our stages and our Instagrammable moments. Like no one was doing them like us. They were different every single event. Like it was really crazy. So the pressure now to like come up with what's new is like so intense, but like it is exciting. Like, and as we're kind of going through the motions of like building out what that looks like, it's been really fun to kind of reimagine and like what's new and like what's exciting. So
yeah, you're like, here's the vision. We're going to light you on fire.
Yeah, exactly. Trust us. Yeah, no, totally. Like, it's like, you have to go to such extremes. Like we're going to parachute in all the speakers, like the extremes are intense, but yeah, we're really excited to like, we got to do something different.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is start with a niche audience. I think that's really important. And honestly, like that's not what we did. Like, because I think at the time there wasn't as many events. So the audience of getting like women together, there was no one else doing it. So it was like very easy to like cultivate that audience. That being said, now focus on a niche audience of enthusiasts about your brand. The thing that made Create and Cultivate so successful was the fact that women came, they loved it, they had a good time, and they told their friends about it. And like that was like the net effect of like how we grew so quickly and how so many people were able to buy like tickets or, you know, have that FOMO about it. Having that group of like 10 women that are like obsessive about your business and brand is crucial. And so like, you know, give them, you know, some free tickets, some swag, whatever it is that you're able to do to like get them to be like your biggest ambassadors, because you can't do it on your own. Paid marketing is expensive. And like truly the best way to get someone to attend anything or even buy a product or whatever is people they trust. Telling them to do it.
It's so cute. I don't know why. Oh, because I was going to do an episode about something related to events. So I went back and I looked in my little folder. Our first event was 2017. And I remember making this list and I found the list that just said 20 women who could invite 10 friends.
Exactly.
And that was actually how I filled the first event. And then the event became this experience that people really wanted to come back and wanted to bring friends. But the first time I had it was an idea. It wasn't something. It had like a little Canva
tickets
graphics.
or was it free?
It was $70 for a half day.
Perfect.
That's all I could handle.
Great.
And it was perfect because it tested the concept to have people ask,
like you don't have to go so big so fast.
And
I love that.
And I didn't profit. I think I lost maybe like under $1,000, but because I kept the budget small, because I really relied on a lot of personal relationships and a lot of things to keep the budget small, it was not a catastrophic thing, where now if an event didn't fill, I mean, the AV budget alone is $100,000.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly.
It's a lot different. Let's talk trends.
Yeah.
Because again, create and cultivate, and you specifically, you're such a visionary. You are always at the forefront of what's going on, and that's what has made your brand so recognizable. What are some of the trends that you're seeing for events?
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things I'm like obsessed with, and Marina's like, please shut up about this, but I'm like so into it.
Let's talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah. It only really works for like the supper club event if we're going to do it. But like, there's been this amazing trend towards fashion and food companies coming together. So I don't know if you've seen this, but basically on Instagram, it's essentially these chefs or, catering companies, whatever, that are creating these really almost like artful Instagrammable moments using food, like these gigantic platters or like these like really beautiful salads that are like checkerboarded, like, and I'm like obsessed with it. Like, cause I love food so much. So I'm like, I just think these are so beautiful.
Let's make it pretty.
And like, yeah, let's make it so pretty. And like, it's this obsession I have. And so I've been seeing a lot of the big fashion brands like Fendi, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, whoever, have been doing these dinners, like even Loewe and Jacquemus and like all the big like kind of brands are doing these like dinners with influencers and editors that are just like unbelievably like artistic and beautiful. And so I'm obsessed with that. So I'm like, want to do something in that vein for sure. And then also I would say there's like a lot of, I think we'll start seeing next year more, and we're getting involved in this too, women in sports specific events. So obviously, like, I think women in sports are having a huge moment, whether it's like, equal pay movement within the WNBA, whether it's like the New York Liberty just like winning, the entire championship. Like there's just a lot of excitement around that. And I think there's a lot of conversations happening around specifically athletes, but not necessarily women working in the world of sports, which I find really fascinating because there's so much opportunity there. So I think a lot of like different avenues around women who are working in male dominated industries hasn't been at the forefront of the conversation. So that's something that we're excited to kind of dive into and tackle. And I think is kind of trending.
And there's so many parallels between the mindset of athletes and the mindset of entrepreneurs that it just brings in such a different perspective that translates.
100%.
Ooh, okay. I cannot wait for that part of the festival specifically.
Yeah.
That's so great. Okay. So what about mistakes that you either see people make or you've made in the event space as you've grown the brand? I think the biggest one that comes to mind, going back to something you said earlier, it was just about like what you're prioritizing as far as budget, to realize that it doesn't make or break the experience to spend money on half of the things that you could. One of the things that we have done from the beginning is we don't pay speakers.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can end up using a lot of their budget on a big name speaker, thinking that that's going to make the event. No speaker has ever filled our event.
Yeah.
I've had to fill every event, and I've gone in with that mentality. So that's the first one that comes to my mind, is just the belief that a certain speaker is going to move the needle when it really is you.
I totally agree.
Selling the event.
And that's been our experience, I would say, overarchingly. I think like, even again, like speakers are amazing. I think once you're there and you experience it, like there's some speakers that like just blow your mind at how amazing they are. But I wouldn't say that's necessarily the reason why people buy the ticket. Maybe a small percentage. But the reason why you have those big name speakers, I think, is for like the press and the media that comes out of it, and like the caliber it puts your event at, the credibility you get alongside of it, all those things, which is great. Also important. But I totally agree on that. Like definitely don't rely on that specifically. I would say try to find a venue that you can grow into. Like I think like a lot of times what we do strategically is there's venues where I'm like, is there a parking lot that if we sell out and have a ton of million sponsors, like we can put a floor in and like create a whole nother area or a whole nother stage or a whole nother whatever. But also if we don't, this event is still great.
It's not going to feel weird.
It's not going to feel weird or like, whatever. So try to find venues where it's like you can grow and create like new spaces within, so that you're not like breaking your budget and you can track accordingly. I would also say, and this is really challenging to do, but like the more sponsorship you can get before booking anything, the better. It's challenging.
Or even pre-selling tickets.
Pre-selling tickets is a great way to do it, because I think oftentimes like we're lucky in that like our sponsorships were years out. So we already had like budgets for things where we were like, oh, we already know. Obviously, like that's changed a little bit. Now it's a little bit different, like as you're building out, but like the more in advance that you can plan, the less expensive it's going to be. I think that's also important. People always wait to the last minute with events for signage, for whatever. And rush fees are very real. Like it's so frustrating. If I see a rush fee on our budgets, I get so upset because I'm like, I know we had time. Granted, there are events where you don't have time and you have to rush things, but like really being like buttoned up about understanding the rush fees for any of your vendors, the catering team, the printing team, the fabrication team, like understanding that and hitting those can save you so much money. And then the other thing I would say is like always have a 10% overage, like contingency within your budget. You will use it. Like Absolutely. It's every single time. So like, even if you're like down to the wire, you're like, I know we're going to stay under this budget. On site, something's going to happen. Yeah. And it's going to be this really annoying call you're going to have to make where you're like, yeah, well, like, oh, the tequila didn't come. All the bottles are shattered or like whatever. There's always something. So like plan for that contingency.
I remember the year that our stage designer was like, Linz, you need to see what the stage would look like wrapped in white vinyl. And then she showed me what it looked like in wrapped in white vinyl. And then I had to have it, you know? It's like those little things. I know.
I know. Once you go back, I mean, once you go into like the more like beautification of like all the fabrication stuff, it's like you can't unsee it.
And the thing that I've done from the beginning, this is why I was able to say yes to the beautiful white vinyl. It did look amazing. Is because the way we build our budget is I always have kind of like the bare bones budget, the things that actually make a difference for attendee experience. And then as we hit different markers in terms of ticket sales, then I can add the would be nice things or allocate a little bit more budget to the beautiful white vinyl wrapped stage. How do you guys kind of go in knowing that events they're predictable to an extent? Now we can probably predict a little bit better what the ticket sales are going to be for different things, but is there like a strategic way that you really kind of budget things out?
It's exactly like you said. Okay. That's basically how you do it. You start with worst case scenario, which is like where I like kind of live. And then you go into like V2, V3, V4, and you kind of build from there, because I think like going in with the most expensive is like never the right idea. But like you also, again, need to know where to spend on that. Like I know we're going to spend on our stages. I know we're going to spend on an Instagrammable moment. Everything else I feel like can be cut or like reduced to like something less exciting if need be, right? And then you can make those decisions based on that. But I think that's the exact way to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that I've loved watching is as you're building your other brand, Cherub, you are incorporating events into the marketing plan. That's at least what it looks like from the outside. So let's speak about this now in the sense of a brand that isn't an events business, but they want to start to think about how to engage their customers in these experiences that bring the brand to life. Did you always know that events were going to be a part of Cherub?
No, I did not know that, because basically Cherub's a tech platform. Like that is what it is. Yeah. And like, nor do I ever want to start another events company, obviously. But basically what had happened was for our launch event, we did a founder funder mixer at my house, like literally talk about no budget. We had literally no budget. At my house, we partnered with Sophia Amoroso's trust fund, was like a co-host on the event. Okay. Everything was donated, basically like because everything was investable. So every drink you could invest in, every snack you could invest in, all those different things. I like paid some friends to be a bartender, like whatever. And then we did have some catering on site because we're like, obviously we need people to eat. Yeah. We had a friend do the door, which was like my pool door, like whatever. We had 400 RSVPs to this event. Let me tell you, I was panicking. Okay. So basically the list was curated with cool startup founders that were fundraising and angel investors and VCs. We were like shocked at how many RSVPs we got, but we were like, it's fine. Like people are not going to show up. Everyone showed up. Like literally everyone showed up. It was chaos. It was craziness. It was crazy. We actually also had this pop-up shop on site where you could pick one gift. We gave everyone like a ticket from a brand that was raising. So there was like dog treats. There was like chocolate, candles. It was really cool. So it was a really cool event. From that event, what was fascinating was over $400,000 in capital was deployed to the different brands on site. Wow. We were shocked. We had no idea. People were like, that was the best event. I couldn't believe I met this like investor in real life. Like the connections were happening. This person tried my wine. I wasn't even there. And they like emailed me to invest, like whatever. Like we were like blown away. So we were like, okay, interesting. We polled our audience. They were like, we would pay for events like this. Like this was so amazing. So we're like, okay, interesting. So in building out the membership model for Cherub, quarterly events is part of that model for both the angel investors and the founders. So we host these founder funder mixers and they're hugely popular. It's actually insane. So we just did one for LA Tech Week. We had, I think, 700 RSVPs, 200 people came through. It was packed. And it was really cool, brands on site with their QR code that you could scan and go to their data room, learn more about, invest if you wanted to. All that stuff. Everything at the bar was investable. Just like a really cool experience.
Yeah.
The major difference is like, one, it's like men and women, which is like different for me, obviously.
Yeah.
Like everyone always thinks Cherub's just for women. I'm like, no, it's for everyone.
Tell your male friends. Okay?
Yeah, please tell your male friends and your male investor friends to join. But yeah, it was hugely successful. Like, again, we just see that like in-person connection. I think for people to invest and write checks, like they want to meet the founder, you know what I mean? In some way, shape, or form. So we found that's been really successful. Then we've also started hosting these like private angel investor, high net worth individual dinners as well, which we found have been really fruitful because like all of these investors want to talk to other investors. About the deals they're doing. So we realized like there is this connection piece and this connection point as well. That being said, like we're not aiming like, and again, to your point, these do not make money. These are marketing expenses as part of our strategy to get new members on the platform, which is also a great way to do it as well. And like, to your point, even if you have an event that loses money, but drives awareness to your e-course, your consultancy, whatever, like that's a win at the end of the day. Like, I think if your goal is brand awareness and to drive to something else that you monetize, like, I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as like a great marketing tactic.
Yeah. And that's what I really look at events as, is whether you're the one hosting the event or, you know, both of our events offer opportunities for other brands to be aligned with the event and have that as a marketing platform. I just don't think you can compete with the magic that happens with an in-person touch point.
Agreed.
No matter how big or small that is, I just really firmly believe, especially as technology is advancing, AI is a bigger conversation, it's so exciting. I think it makes the personal connections even more valuable. And it makes me excited about doubling down on the in-person experiences in that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. Granted, it is way more work and it requires a lot more, but I think having it as an element in your business is crucial.
What are you most excited for this upcoming year, 2025? I mean, the festival is going to be epic.
Yeah.
There's so many things going on.
I'm really excited for the festival. I'm also excited to kind of experiment, again, like all of our different events we have going on, in like, what is the new vision for Create and Cultivate? Like in terms of like art, because my role is really focused on creative and like, what does it look and feel? Yeah. And so I really want to explore like, what can we do that's so unique and different that people are like, wow, like they're really doing it differently than they have before. And that's a challenge for me, to be honest. Like, I've been doing it for so long that I've designed every single stage we had. I've designed every single Instagrammable moment in collaboration with like my Kelsey from East Olivia, who's a florist. Like, we've done it all together. And it's like, going back to the drawing board is tough. Like when you're trying to think of like, what is the most innovative, cool thing I can do, you know, without feeling like, you know, it's a huge departure. So I'm excited for that. Like, you know, right now we're doing all the creative for our Austin event, and it's really, I think, going to be very different and kind of exciting than what we've done in the past.
Are the speakers parachuting in from the ceiling?
Zip lining in. Oh my God, could you imagine the insurance on that alone? I can't.
As an event host, spoken as a true event host, we start to think about the liability side of things.
The liability, I cannot.
Like epic photo moment and the liabilities isn't worth it.
I can't, but that would be amazing.
So where is the best place for people who haven't plugged into your community, who have heard about all these amazing opportunities? Where's the best place to engage, to join, to stay on the radar for what's coming up next?
Yeah. So createcultivate.com is the website. Sign up for our newsletter is probably the best way to keep in touch, or follow us on social at Create Cultivate. Our next big event is going to be Austin. We also just launched the blueprint with our new co-host. So it's myself, Marina, and Cindy Ramirez, who's the founder of Chill House, which is really exciting.
Cool.
So she's cool because she has like brick and mortar experience as well as product experience. It brings a lot to the table from that perspective. So that'll be really fun. And then we also have our Legacy House, which is launching soon. And then, Austin for sure, I think is a good one to go to if that's your first introduction to the brand.
It's such an exciting time to be in this space, but it's an exciting time for people to be a part of your world because, like I said, it is like a fresh new energy, and the older energy was amazing and it was like I said, at the forefront of this industry, and you just continue to push that envelope. It's one of my favorite things about you, why I'm so grateful to call you a friend, and I can't wait to be there.
Yay, I can't wait to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here today, and hopefully I'll see everyone in one of these rooms in 2025.
Can't wait.